Greetings EPQists and welcome to this week's coronavirus special, where we will be looking at the reflective log and project proposal in one foul swoop. So what is the reflective log? Is it, as the picture suggests, a log that you go and sit on and reflect? No, of course it's not. Sorry, I did it too late and I was just getting bored. It is a project diary for your EPQ. Now, for those mark scheme nerds amongst you, it is part of the AO1 management part of the mark scheme, which is worth 9 out of 54 marks. And that 9 out of 54 marks is not just for the reflective log. You've got the project proposal and a few other bits and bobs thrown in there as well. So, in itself, the reflective log is not worth 10, 20 marks, but every mark is absolutely crucial if you're going for those A stars and A's. And as I've said before with EPQ, pretty much everyone can get there if you do the work, you put the hours in, and you stick to the schedules and use the resources that we give you. There's no reason why everyone can't get an A or an A star. Anyway, so the reflective log, as the mark scheme says, keeps records of your progress and shows you reviewing and adapting your plan as necessary. So it is a project diary, in effect. Now, the reflective log is submitted at the end of it all on this Word document that you can access on the VLE, but I wouldn't start it out on this Word document. I would add it later, and I'll explain why in just a second. The way that I would keep it is through the VLE, strangely enough. So on the EPQ page on the VLE, there is a tab that says Reflective Journal. Now what you need to do there is create an initial post for your first ever EPQ reflective journal entry. And then from then on, you simply reply to your own post as if you were in conversation with yourself. Now what that does is it automatically keeps things nice and simply in order, and it times and dates all of your entries. So it's a not necessarily very elegant way of doing it, but it is actually really quite good. Most teachers will demand that you do it because it is something that we can check. So if you're keeping your reflective journal however beautifully on another system, then that may be wonderful, but we can't check it, whereas we know we can check the reflective journal on the VLE. So in effect, it is compulsory to do it on the VLE, although obviously have a chat with your own teacher if someone's got some super wonderful system that they want to share with us. Then it's always worth asking, because the thing to remember with EPQ is that there are all sorts of different ways of approaching it. The mark schemes are quite general, and there are all sorts of different technological solutions to things. We're suggesting to you many of the ways that we know work, but if you've got other ideas, then certainly check with your EPQ teacher. So what is in the reflective log? What does it do? It is reflections on project management, and that's something that's really important to get to grips with the EPQ. The EPQ is a project, not an essay. The essay is, or the discussion as it's called, is part of the project, but it is very much, the marks are awarded for the management of a project, not an essay. The difference will become clear in a bit. So make sure you're reflecting on your project management skills, and they need to be reflections. These log entries need to be reflections, not descriptions. So things that you can put in there are, for example, what worked when you were doing some research. Was it a skill? Was it speaking to a particular person? Was it a particular software platform or website? If it worked well, how will you use it again in future? Will you use it for a different part of your research review or your discussion section, or how are you going to use it going forward if it worked well? And might you tweak it just a little bit to make it appropriate for something else you're going to do? Other stuff that needs to go into this reflective log, and this is where a lot of students struggle, and again, this is a crucial part of EPQ, It is a project, and in projects people make mistakes all the time. What you then have to do is reflect on those mistakes and adapt your behaviour for the future. And that is a good thing. You will get marks for doing that in the EPQ and showing how you did it, how you changed, what you learned. If you do a whole reflective log with no mistakes, then they will, I say they because the teachers will be marking it, although we do have to send it off for moderation. But whoever marks it or moderates it will read your reflective log and say, well, that's obviously not entirely accurate, is it? People always make mistakes. So record your mistakes, record your thoughts on those mistakes, and record your suggested solutions, and that will be brilliant for a reflective log. It will also genuinely help you manage the project, which is the other reason why we do it. So remember that corrected mistakes are excellent. Don't just say something like, oh, I went to the library 5 minutes before it shut, and so I had to leave without doing anything. Oh well, I went to the library 5 minutes before it shut. In future, I will get to the library 2 hours early. Slightly sort of patronising suggestion, but you know what I mean. You get the picture. So, when should you do it? Well, it should be done weekly, although there's no reason why you can't do it after a big event. If you've done two or 3 hour sessions on EPQ, I would probably, in a week, I would probably just do a reflective log at the end of each one, but certainly it needs to be done weekly and it needs to be uploaded to the VLE, as I was speaking about before. Now, the length and content of these logs will vary according to the stage of your project and your experience and what you did during the week. Some week entries will not necessarily be that big and that sort of emotionally and dramatically reflective, and then other weeks where you've done 8 or 9 hours of EPQ, there have been mistakes, there have been victories, there have been no parties now, no coronavirus, absolutely no EPQ parties. Anyway, you know what I mean. The length and content will absolutely vary. So what you shouldn't do is, if you've had a lighter week on the EPQ, put in 2 or 3 lines. Don't make stuff up that will just sound a bit wishy-washy and weird and strange, because the next week put in a much longer, more detailed, more reflective entry. So what sort of things will go in this reflective log? Well, research strategies, for example. That's going to be one of the big things. Did they work? What did you do? How can you improve? What went wrong? So use of technology. Have you found a brilliant project management piece of software that you think will revolutionize the way you do things in the future? Great, put it in. Have you used something you thought would work, like a Word document, to keep track of things, but actually that hasn't been the technical solution that you thought it would? Brilliant, put it in, and then reflect on why it didn't work and what you could do to improve it. Other things that students do so often, especially at the beginning, is reflections on the question. It is very common to tweak the question or sometimes even change it quite radically. And a great reflective log will be something like, having done X amount of research, I've realized that I need to add this other factor to my question, or I've decided to focus my question on a narrower area because I've discovered so much in my research. And again, you need to reflect and say, well, when I first started out, I didn't realize quite how much there was in these 2 or 3 areas, and now I feel that within themselves they would make a brilliant EPQ question, and if I try to do the other areas I was planning on doing, then it will be too much and it won't be an effective EPQ. Other things to reflect on will be your structure. So if you've got what are the causes of the English Civil War, which you couldn't do if you're a medieval historian, because that's something that you've done in class. You say you've got religion, economics, and politics. Partway through your EPQ, you might say, well, actually, I need, having done some research, I've discovered there's a 4th crucial pillar of international warfare or international tensions or something. So those would be excellent reflections to put in your reflective log. And obviously, some weeks you'll sit there umming and ahhing about your question, and then the next week you won't. And hopefully, towards the end, there won't be much reflection on your question. Other things that again will be crucial reflections will be timings and management. And again, just can't stress this enough. When you have little hiccups and issues and problems, don't try and cover them up. Put them in your reflective log and explain how you fix them, because that's good project management, and that's what you're being judged on. So if you said, well, I anticipated 2 weeks and it took 3 weeks because of some history coursework, or I just misunderestimated. That's not a word, is it? I just underestimated how much time it would take. Therefore, in future, I'm going to tweak my project plan to give myself an extra day to do something similar. That's brilliant. That's exactly what they want from the reflective log. So a couple of sample entries, if you like, which I've probably covered, but we'll go through them again and have a look at what's good and what's bad. So if you said, for example, I went to the library and got out 2 books on the French Revolution, I wrote part of my introduction and then did my history coursework, there's no reflection in there, is it? That is a simple factual description of what you did, and this is a reflective log that is absolutely crucial. So this, if you had a couple of these entries in your reflective log, it's just not the end of the world. I wouldn't lose any significant sleep over it. But if this is the majority of your entries in your reflective log, then it's not a reflective log, it's a log. Whereas this, for example, is better. I went to Sussex University Library today and accessed 1 relevant journal. It was excellent, but I didn't have the facility to copy it. For my next visit, I'll work out how to get photocopy credit, and I'll arrive in the morning to give myself more time to access journals. I noticed there were dedicated subject librarians, so I'll speak to one of them for guidance on suitable resources as I struggle to understand the potential sources available. University libraries are an excellent resource, so I will look into visiting Brighton Uni Library as well. So there's lots of what went well, there's lots of what I'll do differently in future. And none of this is sort of intellectual, academic, or related to the the academic side of the project, but this is all good, solid project management stuff. So yes, hopefully there'll be deep intellectual academic reflections in some logs. Other times it will be just the brutal practicalities of research. Okay, so another one. I used a project management software called Trello to keep track of tasks and deadlines, and it's been unbelievably useful, especially it provides a visual overview of the project. I will explore the possibility of using Trello to record resources as well. So again, we've found a piece of software, we've reflected on its usefulness, there's a word, utility. And you've said why, so you've said, well, it provides a visual overview. So there is just that bit more reflection and specificity. And then, further reflection, how can I use it for the future? Super, right. Another one. Having done a great deal of further research on economic arguments, it seems that my question may be too narrow in focus for a successful EPQ. After reading Smith in particular, I think my question needs to be broadened to include religious motivation as well. I propose changing the question to, so you see, there you go, again, a sort of classic reflection on a question, something one would see at the beginning of the EPQ process. Right, so on to the next thing now. Again, one thing to just remember with these videos and some of the other videos that I've produced, sometimes they can be a bit class specific. Sometimes you might, some classes will be doing the reflective log and project proposal all in one class. If you're looking at this just to see how the reflective log works, and then suddenly I'm saying, where is your project proposal? And that's not what your teacher's told you to do, don't panic. It's all good. These videos can't really cover everyone and everything all the time. And if you're looking at this in 4 or 5 years' time going, what's coronavirus? Well, lucky for you. Okay, so the next big thing is the project proposal. Now, as always with EPQ, you need to use the template. It just helps immeasurably with laying things out, understanding where things go, making sure that you've checked off what you need to check off to get the good marks. Now, this project proposal, it's sort of the most important thing that it does is show that you have planned, underlined, bold, a valid project. So it's showing planning and it's showing an understanding of the question that you've asked. And again, one thing to really make clear to you, it doesn't limit you. So the project proposal shows you've got a valid project, but all projects evolve over the course of time, and there will be resources you suggest, questions that you ask, things that appear in your project proposal that as you get into the meat and drink of your EPQ turn out not to be relevant, or things that you don't have time to explore. And actually there is something at the end of the EPQ where you reflect on those sorts of things, where you didn't have time to explore. So don't feel that this is an intellectual straitjacket, and if you didn't ask a question or suggest a resource or list an objective, that you can't then bring it up in the EPQ later on. So yeah, bear that in mind. So for those mark scheme nerds, this is again part of AO1, the management side of the EPQ, and it is all part of this 9 out of 54 marks. So it belongs in the same pot as the project, the reflective log. Now, what does the mark scheme say? The sort of big things are that this needs to show evidence of effective planning and a detailed time plan. So you need to have shown that you've done research and that you know where you're going and what you're doing to a sort of superficial level. Remember, this is a proposal, but also that you've given thought to timings and the structure of the project. And again, do not panic. When it inevitably goes wrong, you reflect on it, correct it, learn from it, and you get full marks. There's obviously a slight kind of happy medium, if you like. If you say, well, I plan to do my entire EPQ in an hour and a half, then you'll lose marks for being a lunatic. But you know what I mean. If you say, I think this will take 2 weeks and it takes 2.5 or 3, that's just fine. That's absolutely fine. So it's split up into sections, and these are the sections on the template that we've given you. So the template has got the questions in bold at the top, and you need to fill them out. I just cannot stress enough how useful it is and how important it is to look at the exemplars that we've provided you with, in terms of how many words should I write, what kind of question should I write, what sort of thing should I be doing. I think, especially because everyone's doing a different EPQ, I don't know how much how specific or detailed I can be in videos like this. But let's start with section 1. So one thing that people do often forget, I don't know if it's because of the way the template's designed, but put in the working title of your EPQ project. So what's the title that you are thinking of at the moment? Now remember, again, it can change, so do not panic. Put in a well-designed, sensible question. Now hopefully it won't change, and I don't know, I'd say 70-80% of them don't change, but a good 20% will change, either a tiny little bit or really quite dramatically. Do not worry. As long as you manage that as part of the project, you will still get full marks. So the next thing you need to do is something called other questions. So these are other things that you want to find out, and it's not the meaning of, well, it could be the meaning of life if you're doing a philosophy EPQ, but I think the best way to look at this is, and again, we are at the beginning of the process, but it's questions that are sort of showing that you understand the nature of your question and the subject area you have chosen. So, if you were doing one on artificial intelligence, here you might have, and again, you don't need to provide the answers. What is artificial intelligence? Who created artificial intelligence? What's it used for in the wider world? What do people propose that it be used for in the future? And then again, there's not necessarily any right or wrong answer. It's just what are the sensible questions that you would want to know about your chosen area. It's really not a trick question, and chuck together a good paragraph of sensible, relevant questions that show you've thought properly about the subject. If you look at the examples there, potential factors, definitions, principles, concepts, where do I think my initial reading will take me? So again, it's very, very EPQ specific. So again, not too much that I can do in terms of detail. The next section, this is still section 1, what do I want to learn how to do? So I think there are 2 ways to approach this. So it's what are the general project management skills that you are hoping to pick up, and what are the specific area specific skills. So for example, general project management skills, it will be managing a large project over time using project management software, blah, 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 blah. And the more subject-specific ones could be something like, if you're doing a law EPQ, really developing your ability to analyze legal texts and case law. If you're doing an economics EPQ, to really develop your ability to read statistical models. So I think there's 2 things, 2 very broad principles to look at there: the general project management skills and area-specific skills. But again, it's this is useful stuff, and it helps you think and helps you focus and drives you forward. And it's if you've done the work and if you've done the thinking, it's not really, there's not a lot of right and wrong as long as it makes intellectual coherent sense. So section 2, reasons for choosing the project. So we start off with personal interest, and again, there's no real trick to this. It's what made you interested in choosing your EPQ, and you want to just for a paragraph take the marker on your personal journey. You were reading this book and suddenly you felt this burning desire to learn more about the Spanish Civil War, or the nature of autism, and how maybe does that relate to your family or circumstances or interests. The next section is academic importance, and again, what you need to do here is show that you've done some research and you understand why it's an important question to a degree in the field of academia, but perhaps to the world in general. If you're doing the AI question, why is it important that we understand the nature of AI? Well, because AI may well be one of the sort of fundamental means by which society manages itself for years to come. Why is it important that you understand the causes of the French Revolution? Well, because that's fundamental to the kind of French national character or psyche or history. So it completely varies according to EPQs, but you need to show that you do understand that it's an important question. And again, you don't need to necessarily come to a crystal clear answer on that. So what else? Links to other subjects. And again, I would split it down into skills and concepts. So, if you've got something like history, the EPQ is you've got research, you've got argument. The discussion section is very much a humanities essay. It's very similar in some ways to history coursework. And so if you're doing maybe the 3 sciences, maybe think about it in a bit more of a conceptual way. Time management. And if you're doing a more sciencey EPQ, I don't know. I'm struggling. I don't do science, but you know what I mean. Like how if you're doing something on biology, obviously you can't do something that covers the syllabus, but it could support your work in the syllabus, or maybe actually be more relevant to what you're going to go on and do at university, which drifts into the next section, future plans, and how the EPQ will help you. So again, the EPQ And a lot of these are quite similar, and that's fair enough, because what the EPQ does brilliantly is give you detailed knowledge of a subject or the area of a subject, and give you practice of a large, well-researched academic essay, and that is quite a lot of university courses. At the end of the term, you're supposed to hand in, 4,000 word essays, and you've had the whole term to write them, and you need to plan them and research them yourself. So that's one of the reasons why universities love EPQ so much, is because you are fundamentally doing a university level essay and proving to the universities that you can actually do it. Good. Obviously, other future plans, careers, that kind of thing. Again, as long as it's all sane and coherent and shows research and planning and structure and an interest, there isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer. So section 3. Now this is, again, it's all important, but this one is especially important because that mark scheme specifically says you've got to plan your timings. Now, what I would do is I'd have a look at the exemplar and look at all of the activities that they have included. If you've got your own, add them, and if you need to word them in a slightly different way, by all means do, but this is the sort of thing that you need to do. You need to have all of the areas of the EPQ that you'll be doing. You need to have an understanding of how long they will take, and you need to have an understanding of when you will do them. Now, there's a further way of expressing this in a more visual form called a Gantt chart, which we will look at a bit later on. But section 3 for the project proposal at the moment, you need to just sit down and sketch out your time. What are you going to do? How long is it going to take you? Have a look at the exemplars for all the things, and in the workbook for all of the things that you need to do. What I would strongly recommend doing is consider your own situation and put things in there. Have you got a holiday coming up? Is there going to be a period of time where, because of history coursework or something else, where you're going to have to minimize things? So you might say, well, actually, I'm going to have 4 weeks to do this because I know that for 2 weeks of it, I'll be very busy on something else. And that's not an admission of failure. Again, that's excellent project management. Obviously, if you say to your teacher, oh yeah, I'm not going to do your homework, so I'm doing someone else's, well, naughty boy, girl, whatever. But with EPQ, it's kind of the other way around. You're showing that you can manage yourself and your time, and actually a multitude, many different things. So be realistic, but again, don't panic, because as I've said before, if you put in 2 weeks and it takes 3, reflect, adapt, full marks. So the 4th section of the project proposal. Now, what you need to have in here is 20 or so varied sources that you've used or might use. And what that's doing is showing to me on the examiner that there's enough information out there for you to do your project. It's not, I think in an ideal world you would have read all 20, but it may not always be the case. But what you're doing is showing me that there are, at the very least, 20 sources of a variety of different types, so journals, videos, newspapers, podcasts, etc., etc. And again, you can have a look at the template. It breaks it all down nicely for you, and you need to show me that they are of good quality. So reputable academic journals, reputable newspapers, podcasts by not necessarily known individuals, because how could a marker know every single person in every single field? But it's pretty obvious just from looking at a couple of links whether something is academic enough. So once you've got that in, there are 2 other sections. The next one is background information, and these are the things. This is really a list of things that you need to know, and this will often be the sort of plank, or at least the starting point of your research review. Now, your research review is where you lay out the background information that an individual needs to be able to understand the discussion, which is the essay or the argument part that follows next. Now again, these will adapt, these will change, but what they do is they show that you have thought about it and have some idea of where you're going. So background information, what do I need to know? And again, there's sort of a bit of overlap, or there might be a bit of overlap with some of the questions that you've asked. But here, maybe just chucking in principles, concepts, ideas, historical facts, rather than questions. The next part is the issues for debate, and these will be, you might have sort of 10 solid issues, and they will start to guide you towards what sections you're having in your discussion, so the big essay part of the EPQ. And I think the thing to bear in mind here is if you can't think of what background information is necessary, you haven't done enough research. If you don't really know what 5, 10 or so areas of debate are, then you haven't done enough research, or you haven't done the right type of research. And remember, all of these things can change, but they're a really good guide as to whether you are going to be able to do a valid project, whether you've got an idea of the information you need to know and the arguments that you are likely to have. And again, remember, it can all change. So if you've written in one of your issues to debate and you've read a couple of articles, and in those 2 articles they seem to think that economic impact is a massive deal. So you put that in, issues for debate, the significance of economic impact. And then after doing tons and tons more research, you realise, well, actually those are 2 quite obscure scholars, and that no one else really thinks that. That's fine. That's great. That's really, really not a problem. Especially if you reflect and adapt. So just a quick reminder, what is the project proposal supposed to do? It's supposed to show that the question is valid. So you've had some thoughts about the argument, you've had some thoughts about the facts necessary, and you've shown that there is the research out there for you to be able to write a decent EPQ on it. You need to show that the project has been planned in terms of timing and management. And again, these things can change, they will change. It is not a straitjacket, it is a valid plan. Again, as I said before, I just can't stress enough. Hopefully this all has made sense as a video, but have a look at the project proposals on the exemplars. I think the genetics one is better than the other one, but they've both got some good things about them. And again, this project proposal is not these tricky little trap questions to try and catch you out. It is just showing that it's a valid question, and you have some ideas about what you need to know and where you are going. As always, double check with your teachers about which sections they want you to fill in when. It doesn't necessarily always all have to be done in one go. And a final thing to consider, whilst we have very strict deadlines for the EPQ where you have to hand things in, that's so that you get feedback and can go away and act on it. But fundamentally, you can change or tweak any part of your EPQ right up until the last minute. Now, if you do, so if there was something in your project proposal that you just were a bit irritated by when you were preparing it for handing in, or 3 or 4 months in, you can go back and tweak it, you can go back and fix it, you can go back and change it if you really want to. What we won't do is provide you with, what we won't guarantee is that we will provide you with feedback on it. I hope that made sense. Good, lovely, well done, and I will see you in the next exciting instalment of EPQ Coronavirus Special.